Hi guys, what's up? Welcome to another video in the infant sleep training series. Here, I'm gonna break it down into the details of how you can sleep train your child so that they are able to sleep through the night. Here is my daughter Florence, who is going to be 6 months old in a couple of days. And she has been such a good sleeper. She was able to sleep through the night at 7th week, and now at around 5 months, she's able to sleep from 8:45 p.m. all the way until 7 a.m. in the morning. So let me share with you some of the methods that I've been using for her to sleep through the night. So first and foremost, you really have to make sure that for the child, the cycle goes like eat, wake time, and sleep time. Not the other way around. So it's not eat and sleep and then wake up and play, because that's the more natural thing for the child to do. Feeding is a laborious work, and after all the effort in feeding and they're eating and they're using up all their energy, they just want to fall back to sleep. Don't let that happen, because that's not healthy for your child to develop really well-established sleeping habits. So eat first, and then play with your child, do all the things, play peekaboo with them, let them have some fun on an activity mat, use that time to make them use up their energy and then sleep. And then for the next feeding time, you can wake your child up. Don't ever be afraid to wake your child up for a feeding, because healthy sleep goes with well-established feeding. Remember that. So eat, wake, and then sleep. The nap time has to follow a wake time. And then really observe your child. When I talk about observe your child, it's not just to, take a cute picture of her when she's smiling. It is to really observe your child's hunger cues and always check their responses. So pick up the hunger cues correctly. A lot of times parents tend to misinterpret their boredom cry or their attention calling cry as their hunger cry. However, hunger cues usually goes like that. They might be cry a little bit, and then they might be smacking their lips as they cry, and they might put fingers into their mouth and show signs of hunger when they look at you. It's like no matter what you do, they just want to eat. That's kind of the hunger cue. However, if they're crying out of attention, they might be smiling right when you pick them up. So really observe your child. Each child is different. What I was talking about is a generic sort of observation I've seen in my own child, Florence. Right, Florence? You gave me those cues. And they might not apply to everyone. And always prioritize your baby's need before the timeline. However, you do have to keep a timeline. So PDF method, which stands for parent-directed feeding, is the method that I've been using, and it works perfectly. And I would say that you have to really judge from the timeline that you've set, the schedule, as well as your child's specific need. So during growth spurt, say if the child wants to keep eating, you really have to follow up with their nutritional need. You cannot ignore that and work against that. And be prepared for the growth spurt, but otherwise, really stick to the schedule. Don't go more than, say, 30 minutes away from the schedule. And you have to work according to your child's need, not against it. However, it doesn't mean that if they want to fall asleep right after feeding, you let them, because that's just not a healthy practice. For the health of the baby, you have to, at that time, exercise some of the parental intervention and make them awake. And how do you sleep train your child? Basically, you follow a very well-structured schedule from week 1 to week 6. So since the child was born all the way until the 6th week of their life, you can basically feed them every 3 hours. And that time, so each feeding, say the first feeding is at 7 a.m., the next one might be at 10 a.m. or 9:30 a.m., depending on the child. But follow a time schedule that's about 3 hours apart from each other. That's really, really tiring. And I'm sure it'll all pay off when you see your child healthy and well, but do follow that schedule strictly. Don't just feed your child based on hunger cues. If you organize your child's day into that schedule, their nutritional need corresponds perfectly with that schedule. It's also the scientifically proven most healthy schedule for the child to be fed every 3 hours or so for the first 6 weeks of their lives. And with that, each feeding for me lasts 30 to 40 minutes. So you do each side for 15 to 20 minutes. When the child was first born, they don't eat very fast. Give them time, really make sure each feeding is a full feeding. Don't feed for 5 minutes and then play with them and another 10 minutes. That just doesn't work very well with the purpose of sleep training. And then, how do you merge into 7th week and take out the midnight feeding? So, I think from week 4 to week 6, you are allowed to do 1 midnight feeding, which means the last feeding of the night would be 11 p.m. And then in 4 hours, which is 3 a.m. in my case, I would feed my child again. And then at 7 a.m., I feed her again. That's from week 4 to week 6. So she does have 1 midnight feeding. And that works well because before 7th week, all babies have the nutritional need to do at least 1 midnight feeding. So see if your child would allow for 2 a.m. feeding and 5 a.m. feeding fit into that 3 a.m. sweet spot. And everyone's sweet spot is different. Mine was at 3 a.m. and yours might be at 3:30 or 4 a.m. It doesn't matter, but see if you can merge the 2 midnight feedings into 1 midnight feeding from week 4 to week 6. And then at 7th week, the most crucial part comes. You will take out the midnight feeding. And that comes quite difficult for a lot of people. But for me, one trick that I've been using is to make sure the last feeding of the night is a long and full feeding. So I would go for 40 minutes or more than 40 minutes for the 11 p.m. feeding. Make sure that Florence has got enough nutrition to carry her throughout the night. And don't be too concerned with nutrition. After 7th week, if they get full feedings each feeding, they can totally go without the midnight feeding. They don't need that midnight nutrition to keep them energetic and healthy for their growth. However, the prerequisite for that is full feeding for each one. So don't forget about that part I just mentioned. And I usually feed her for an extensive amount of time, which is usually 45 minutes, 40 minutes for the 11 p.m. feeding. And she was able to go all the way until 6:30 a.m. I think the first day I tried it, and I was amazed. And then with some time, 6:30 wake time became 7 a.m., which is the perfect spot I wanted it to be. It just comes very natural. So if you do things step by step, you make certain adjustment from 4th week to 6th week, and then a big adjustment, take out the midnight feeding at 7th week. And each morning for the first feeding, so the 6 a.m. or the 7 a.m. feeding, I gave her a really large feeding as well. I give her at least 40 minutes to make sure that she replenishes herself from that lack of feeding at midnight. And she's really happy when she sleeps more, right? Florence, you're really happy. And then from week 7 to week 10, you have the 11 to 7 a.m. But by week 10, you can slowly work that towards a 9:30 or 9 p.m. last feeding. So the stretch over the night would be much longer. Last feeding would be 9 p.m. and then her wake time would still be 7 a.m. I don't usually recommend sort of delay your wake time. Make sure child wakes up early because they do have the natural tendency to enjoy waking up early. I'm gonna let Florence to play on her own for a little bit. I think she's looking at the play mat, really excited to play with all the jam over there. So I will be right back. So hello again, I'm back. Having put Florence down for her little self-play time. And then I'm gonna keep going with that week 7 to week 10 merge, which sort of push the last feeding back about 2 hours. How would you do that? That one is usually a really tricky merge. It's hard to push the last feeding even further. You know, at week 10, there's still less than 3-month-old, and it's a big change. So I do that step by step. So each day you push it back about 15 minutes or 20 minutes. If on a good day, you could start pushing it back for half an hour and see how it goes. And if I push the feeding back, say from 11 p.m. to 10:45, I would keep experimenting with the 10:45 p.m. as last feeding for a couple of days. So 10:45 for a couple of days, and then 10:30 for the third day, say. And then I would push it back for another 15 minutes and then see how it goes for another 2 days. So you gently push it back so that the change doesn't seem as sudden and dramatic for the child. And there, nutritionally, it's easier for them to adjust to the new time. And after that, so we're at week 10, the baby, through that slow merging, slow pushing back, they're able to have their last feeding at 9:30 p.m., which is the goal. And after that, you use the same method to push the feeding back to 8 p.m. And it remains that way all the way until, I think, for quite a while. We are at 25th week and we're still using 8 p.m. as our last feeding. Anyways, so using merging and really gently and gradually merge your feedings to monitor your child's sleep. Oh, what's up? I think Florence needs me. I'll be right back. Yeah, right. So through merging, through really gently and thoughtfully pushing the feeding time back, you are able to maintain it from, say, 8 p.m. all the way until 7 a.m. for quite a while. And then the next merging just comes very naturally. But I think for the most part, that is exactly what you need to do, just to really observe your child. Make sure each cycle is feed and then wake and then sleep. And, you know, there are still minor details that you need to adjust and tailor, you know, personalize for your child, because each child is very different. But generally speaking, sleep training is very, very hard, but you just have to do it for the health of your baby. And whenever I deal with child's crying, here is what I do. So I do let her cry because we use baby monitors and we're able to see if she's, you know, having any trouble, or is it just a cry out of attention, that kind of cry. And after I make sure this is really no big deal, you know, she's not having any trouble really, I just let her cry for 10 minutes. And then 10 to 15 minutes, I will go in and pat her. It's a very business sort of interaction. I wouldn't pat her and talk to her a lot or hug her and, you know, do all the loving things that I would love to do with her, especially when she sleeps. I would just pat her and then be business about it. Offer her a pacifier. Pacifier is better introduced after 6th week, 4th week, some people say, but don't introduce it too early if you are breastfeeding like me. So offer her a pacifier, business pat her. Don't give her too many smiles or too much attention. Don't make her feel like she could use crying to leverage power and to, you know, sort of have more fun in life. That's not the purpose of soothing her. It's better to help your child develop self-soothing skills than soothing her yourself. Yeah, so I just want to wrap this video up with Florence by my side and just to tell you how much sleep training could change your life, especially when you are sleeping way better. You are better at taking care of your child in the day because you are more energetic. Eventually, at the end of the day, when they grow up to be individuals, self-soothing skill is what can take them longer in their lives. However, you being there soothing them could only help them temporarily. So why not just start now and have them try to practice that skill. Have them try to become more independent individuals since infancy. So I hope this video is helpful for you and I can't wait to chat to you next time. See you later. I'm gonna go play with Florence.